Sup, dude? Welcome back to Quick Thoughts. This might actually be quick. So the topic of today's video might take a little bit more explaining than usual, because I have noticed something in the past few years that really irks me about media discourse in general, but I suppose it can all be brought back to gaming in the end. Now, there's many ways that this could be characterized, but one thing I would say is like the author's original vision for how a story is going to go, how a story will change over time, and how the public perception and certain fan perceptions of specific media kind of warp their perceptions of the entire franchise at large. Now, this can be a much more widespread thing. Like if you look at something like Smash Brothers, a character's depiction in Smash Brothers can warp how that character is seen in general. Like if you look at Lucas from Mother 3 in Smash Brothers, he acts very different than how he actually does in Mother 3, the actual video game. So there is that aspect of maybe you'll have a preconceived notion of a certain character or piece of media that isn't really true, but has been perpetuated through other means. But what I really am thinking about specifically is a lot of fan reception to the further games in the Xenoblade Chronicles franchise. Because I think and I feel very annoyed by a certain group of Xenoblade 1 fans who swear by Xenoblade 1. They swear by that game and that game alone, and they despise everything else the series had done after that. When that series has been very much planned out, or a lot of big aspects of the overall narrative and the overall lore and the overall direction have been planned out. Whereas the smaller things, like let's say character interactions or how characters are going to be depicted and how they're going to act, how they're going to look, that's all in the process of the individual work. But there's a lot of overarching concepts that were basically planned out since the 90s because of how Takahashi has planned his idea of the perfect works. Now, this is getting into a lot of Xeno series-specific stuff, but I'd like to keep it as general as possible, so I'm going to throw in more examples. One that I like to bring up is Evangelion, because there are, and I'm not too critical of these. I'm not too critical of this thought because of how it was released, and I don't know much about the creator, but there are certain other things about this fandom in general that annoy me, but that's neither here nor there. But I want to talk about Evangelion because there was the original series back in the day, in the 90s, and then there was a movie a couple years later, and then 10 years after that, they started a sequel remake thing, which has been very controversial, I'd say. But there's there's a bunch of movies. Basically, Evangelion, there's a series, there's a bunch of movies. I like to think about it as one thing. Like, it's just, you watch the series, and then you watch the movies. And you treat it as one franchise that has a more or less linear narrative. And it kind of does. Sure, there's, universe things, there's timeline shifts, but really you're following, as far as I see it, this is my reading of Evangelion, you're following all of these character arcs through to the end, from the series to the films. Now, there's a bit of a divide between the Evangelion TV series and the Evangelion movies. I think that divide is more or less brought on because of the way that they were released, because they were released quite a bit of time. There was quite a bit of time in between releases, so a lot of people see them as different things, when really I just see it as a continuation, more or less, of the same story that continues these same characters and follows up on basically where they left off and adds to their story, because I think that the original Evangelion had a lot of ideas, and it had a lot of things going on. It had a lot of moving parts, but I don't feel that it actually followed up on a lot of those ideas. I don't think that the overall narrative of the TV show really feels like a complete story, and I don't feel... It doesn't feel full realized. I don't feel satisfied with it, and that might just be a me thing. I know there are people that disagree with that, and that's totally fine. But what's inarguable is the fact that there is there are sequels to that show that do follow up on those characters and do give answers to questions and do complete character arcs. Whether you believe that the character arcs were complete before or whether you think they needed to be continued is all up to you, really. But let's bring another example into this. I find that there is also this discourse in the Attack on Titan sphere, wherein there are a lot of people who watched like the very first season of Attack on Titan, so like the first 26 or so episodes, and then they thought it was just going to be that, and after that was done and the series began to change and do other things and go into other directions, that was when a lot of people started like turning on it or dropping off it or criticizing it for changing. And that's something that irks me. And I guess that's the main point that I'm getting to. Is there are a lot of stories, or every single kind of story starts somewhere and goes to another place. Every story, or a lot, whether it's planned from the very beginning or it's something that the author comes up with as they go, is debatable. But I've noticed this really weird notion where people will swear by an original entry in a series, like it's the end-all be-all, and just be absolutely averse to anything that comes later, anything that expands upon that material, any qualifiers about that material. And this has really been irking me in the Xenoblade community, because there's almost two communities here, or I mean, every community has their own little portions of it, but it almost feels like there's Xenoblade 1 fans and then there's Xenoblade Chronicles fans, like for the entire series. Whereas Xenoblade 1, it was a pretty self-connected game. You know, it's not like there's things that you're going to be completely oblivious towards until you play the sequels. There's a few little things, but and a few things that are hidden in plain sight, which were always there, that you might not recognize. But then the people who subscribe to the Xenoblade 1 community and take that as the end-all be-all will see the qualifications in the other games, where the other games build up on certain things and explain certain things and show a different take and reveal secrets that you might not have even known were there. And they outwardly reject all of this because they don't want any kind of change or any kind of re-examination of their precious old game that they probably enjoyed when they were much younger and might not even really understand it. Now, maybe that is also another discussion, the idea of like media illiteracy, because I mean, there's a lot of people out there who just look at media and all they see is like fights. They look at Xenoblade 1 and all they see is big robot, Shulk have Minato, Shulk fight the guys. Big God come out, he fight God. Where if you actually pay attention to the story and look at it as an adult, you will see that these games have so much more to them. I don't really know where the life lesson or the message to this really comes in, because I feel like a lot of these people are going to think like this forever. It seems like, and you know, you can't change other people's opinions just by having your own opinion. That's not how it works. We have to, you know, discuss these things. And I'm also not saying that liking one entry out of a series and not necessarily vibing with the entire rest of the series is a wrong opinion to hold, because sometimes you just don't vibe. Sometimes you just don't vibe with certain pieces of media, and you might vibe with one particular piece of media in that franchise. Like, one that comes to mind is Fate Zero. I know that there's probably a handful of people who enjoyed Fate Zero, but never really vibed with the rest of the Fate main timeline, or even anything other than that, where, I would say the main timeline, where Zero takes place, is the most consistent, and then the other timelines are very much off in their own direction. But my take on it is that I view media as a whole. I look at the franchise as a whole. I look at each individual entry as all of their parts, you know? I don't just see the story in a game. I don't just see the gameplay in a game. I don't just see the progression systems and the stats and all that. I see the entire game as it is, or I would like to, because there's definitely games where there's certain mechanics that I'm not even aware of. Yeah, and I think that way of viewing series is better for me, because everything is subject to change. Everything is subject to reflection. As you go through your life, you'll change your opinions, you'll change your views on certain things, and things will change in your mind. Like, your opinions will not be the same, your readings on media will not be the same. And that goes the same for writers. So, I mean, like, if you write a story, if you write it one way, then you might even find a new angle to it that you never even realized before, and you might say, okay, for the sequel, we're going to focus on this angle more. It might not have even been something that you always thought about, but it was definitely there because it was an alternative reading of the work that you made. And then you decide to go in that direction, and that's perfectly valid. So I like to, when I play a game, when I go through a series, anything like that, I like to let it wash over me. I like to see everything for as it is, and then analyze it later and really get to the bottom of it after experiencing it. I don't try to analyze things as they come too often, because a lot of that leads to incorrect assumptions, and when you don't have the full picture of something, you just come to conclusions that are maybe not even in the realm of what the author was thinking about, or what the media was trying to lead you towards. Because you're off in your own section of the game, you're off in your own place where you don't have the full picture. And I think allowing yourself to get the full picture and trying to understand it, not rejecting any aspect of it, is really what I would say gets you the full experience of media, of a game, of a film series, a TV series, because really the end goal is the whole of the work. And you can try to divide it, like, I mean, we, in like manga terms, we talk about different arcs, where like, oh, the Water 7 arc in One Piece was the best arc, and it never got any better. But that doesn't discredit the rest of the series. Long story short, there's more to life, and there's more to series than just that one game that you have nostalgia for. You know, there's always new ways to interpret things. Whether you like the direction a series took or not, I think it's important to try to figure out why that direction was taken. That could be learning more about the author. That could be studying the work yourself. And I definitely would say don't discredit sequels for being different. You know, a sequel can change things. A sequel can show you things in new lights. But definitely don't write it off for that. I think that you should definitely take it for what it is and really try to see the work and understand it. That's what I feel anyways. Like, what if you watched the first half of Fullmetal Alchemist 2003 and then you never watched it again, and then you watched Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, the 2009 version, and because things were different, you got mad about it. And that's not even that's not even going into adaptation differences and stuff like that. That's in a completely different realm. But I think stuff like that is honestly idiotic. But, you know, sometimes you vibe, sometimes you don't. That it is what it is. Maybe I got my point across, maybe I didn't. Maybe I sound like a crazy person. Whatever, that's the end of today's ramble. Hope you enjoyed. Please subscribe to the main protagonist channel, where I do scripted, edited analysis videos, and also subscribe to this channel, Protagonist 2, for rambly whatever videos. That's about it. Peace.